I was coaching a very successful advisor, bringing in about $60 million of new assets per year. And they told me, hey, I know we hit 60 this year, but we actually are going to make our goal 50 mil for next year. And I was like, that's interesting. Your business, not mine. Help me understand. I don't typically see goals that go backwards. Well, bottom line, what it came down to was they had an absolute servicing nightmare. They had so many service appointments on the calendar, they didn't even have time for new appointments. That's a serious problem. If you have a pile of money sitting there, but you are too busy to pick it up, i.e. new clients you could serve, but you're too busy serving old clients that you can't meet with new clients and drive new revenue, that's a problem you have to fix. Welcome back to another episode of Do Business, Do Life. We are here with another solo episode inspired by a text string that I was a part of the other day. This text string happened to be a private mastermind that we work in partnership with Michael Hyatt, and we have about 12, 13 different triad member offices in there. And one of our members basically asked, hey, I know there's some different calendar frameworks, really trying to dial in the structure of what we do here. What are your thoughts? And let's just say there was a big debate, text flying back and forth. Hey, we do this model, we do this model. Here's what's worked for us. And it really just opened my eyes that this is a huge need, a huge problem, debate, philosophical approach that when it comes to scaling a financial services firm, it's worth a conversation. So that's the plan today. And when I really look at why not dialing in your calendar structure, why that's an issue, it really goes back to a lot of the things that you've heard as themes here on the Do Business, Do Life podcast. And that is when it comes to scaling a business bigger than you. So think about where you start out as a financial advisor, a solo player. Typically, everything's on your shoulders, whether you started out door knocking, cold calling, at a captive agency where they're saying, call your grandma, all your family, and convince them to move their IRAs over to you. So whatever that marketing funnel was you grew up in, typically most advisors get into that as a solo player game. And then as you have success, as you have growth, now ideally you're building a business that's bigger than you, that's not just dependent on your time and your effort to drive revenue. As I like to say, you don't want to build a business that when you go on vacation, so does your revenue. That's a bad business model. It's always going to be dependent on you. And so as we look at systems and processes to fix that and open up a firm that allows you to scale from financial advisor to business owner and CEO or beyond, board member, if that's in the cards for you, it's different for every advisor I've coached over the years. There are some common themes I see from frameworks on systematizing, optimizing your calendar to maximize what an hour of your time is worth. And I'm going to get into that today. The other thing too, when it comes to doing business and doing life, obviously the name, the theme of this podcast, it also helps you protect the barriers between business and life so that you aren't getting the texts, the phone calls after hours, interrupting family dinners, ball games on the weekends. And so a lot of these frameworks can play into just structuring so you're working when you want to work and not working when you don't want to. And so we're going to get into that today, but first I thought it might help to hear some real world stories, some stories from real world financial advisors that I've personally experienced over the years. So here's a couple that came to mind on the importance of this and why it matters. The first one I remember, I was coaching a very successful advisor. In fact, the most successful firm I can think of that ran into this issue at the time was bringing in about $60 million of new assets per year between insurance, between assets under management. And one year, I typically did a goal setting conversation towards the end of the year so we could kind of get into strategic planning for the upcoming year. And they told me, hey, I know we hit 60 this year, but we actually are going to make our goal 50 mil for next year. And I was like, that's interesting. Your business, not mine. Help me understand. I don't typically see goals that go backwards. Well, bottom line, what it came down to was they had an absolute servicing nightmare. They had really gone down the path where they'd been growing so aggressively that now when a calendar is wide open and you have no clients, obviously you have plenty of opportunity to put new clients onto that calendar. Well, they had been in existence for about 10 years at this point, 3 partners, and they had so many service appointments on the calendar, they didn't even have time for new appointments. That's a serious problem. So if you think of it this way in business, if you have a pile of money sitting there, but you are too busy to pick it up, i.e. new clients you could serve, but you're too busy serving old clients that you can't meet with new clients and drive new revenue, that's a problem you have to fix. Well, that was one of the things as we started to go into this calendar structure that we started to unpack. One of my favorite podcasts recently, somehow I just found it. It's called Founders, hosted by a guy named David Senra, I think is how you say his last name. I might be butchering that. We'll put it in the show notes. But it's basically, he reads at least a biography a week, autobiography of famous founders. Think Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Sam Walton. And one of the things that he talks a lot about there is some of the most famous entrepreneurs in history. All they did was read the biographies and the models of other famous founders, and they just replicated. They basically ripped off and duplicated all the good ideas. Well, here's one that's really easy to rip off and duplicate. And we use a lot of McDonald's analogies. In fact, on episode 69, part of this I got into, I won't get into it today, but the conversation with Dave Zoller on his channel, Streamline Your Practice on YouTube, we talked about the fact there's actually 3 different types of advisors: selling, service, planning. Most firms, oftentimes that's 3 combined into 1. But if we use the same McDonald's analogy, I'll just share the problem and then we'll get into some of the solutions here in a second. And it's the same problem this firm was facing. If you think about McDonald's, but just zoom out and look at the business model. McDonald's makes revenue when there's new paying customers across from the cash register. That's the equivalent of a selling advisor, sitting across a conference room table or a Zoom for a new prospective client. Well, now a planning advisor, which would be the advisor building a financial plan, that's kind of like the selling advisor punching in the order to the cash register. It shows up on the screen in the back. Okay, so now here's the Big Mac assembly line at McDonald's. That's the equivalent of a planning advisor. They're building the product that's serving the customer. And then if we think about service, the best analogy I have is, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but back in the day where you had to go get your own free refills. The employees of McDonald's had to get them because the pop machine, the cola, soda machine, whatever you call it, wherever you're from, was behind the counter. Think about the order's already been placed. The food has already been delivered. Now you drank the soda. It's empty. You need a free refill. You would go up to the counter over to the side where they kind of pass the food across. And now you would ask for a free refill. And now one of those workers had to grab your soda, ask what kind, and then they would refill it. Since then, McDonald's has solved this problem, and it's just a do-it-yourself refill. But back in the day, you had to ask them. Well, that's the equivalent of a service advisor in a financial services model, because you're servicing a client that has potentially already paid you. Now, obviously, assets under management, you have recurring revenue there typically. But basically, you're doing additional work where some or all of the compensation has already occurred. And so think about one advisor doing all of that. That was the same issue this firm had. You had selling guys and girls that are supposed to be at a cash register driving new revenue, and all they were doing is they had a cash register full of free refills. And so their calendar was too full where all they could do was just do free refills all day. They couldn't drive new revenue. That's a serious problem when it comes to scaling a firm. So I share that context because as we get into the calendar, that will make a little more sense if you look at it through the lens of 3 different types of advisors. Another example, I remember talking, and I fell into this trap. When I got into finance, I was 26 years old, and it was whatever it takes. Small town Kansas, I'm going to serve my clients. I'm going to take care of them. Well, that works great when you have no clients and you can take 1 or 2 phone calls in the evening, say, hey, sorry. But as you start to grow a true book of business, 60, 100, 150 clients, now if you develop that model, all that you have are cell phone calls, texts, emails every night. And one of the things we say a lot at Triad is what brings them to you is what they expect from you. So if you build a model, for example, where you're driving to see every customer, or you set up a model where you are texting and taking phone calls after hours, now you have officially trained your clients that that is your service model. And so one of the things that this calendar gets into is it actually starts to optimize your calendar to do business during the revenue driving time periods of when the office is open, and to do life when it's not, and actually create structures and boundaries. And so we'll get into that. And one of the things I'll just share there real quick, because sometimes I get the objection, well, man, that's what my clients expect. Or, oh, they have $5 million, so I'm kind of doing whatever it takes. Just remember that will be the expectation going forward. And so I've seen a few things where that just really gets you into trouble. And I will tell you, look at other professionals, look at doctors' offices, look at CPAs, look at lawyers. They have office hours and they work with super wealthy clientele, and that's never gotten in their way. I think this financial services model gets broken along the way a bit sometimes because of how we start. We're door knocking. We're figuring out what's it take to get the appointment. Sometimes we're begging for business in the early days. And as you start to scale a true business and firm and start to create specialists within that model, now it's really important to start to have boundaries and structures, because especially if you want to open multiple office locations, look at McDonald's. That's why it's such a cool franchise model to learn from and study and replicate the stuff that works in financial services. Essentially, they are the largest franchise in the world because they've made their business so systematized and replicated the stuff that works that essentially an 18-year-old can run the business, which is pretty insane. And the challenge I would make to many of you listening in is they're doing that to sell hamburgers. Why wouldn't you do it to handle millions of dollars of someone's nest egg? Obviously, that warrants and deserves at least as good of, if not better, systems and processes. So that's a few of the stories. Also, the other thing, I'm a parent. I know we talk a lot about that. I'm a husband. So when it comes to doing business and doing life, I will say the easiest recipe to give yourself an excuse and draw a line there is, hey, I've made a commitment to my family. I'll be home for family dinner. So those of you parents out there, spouses out there, significant others, just say, hey, I made an agreement with my wife and I said I'd be home for family dinner by 6. So therefore the last appointment for the day is at 4 p.m. And I'm hopeful, we can put it on the tail end of your business day. And if not, no worries. I've got some referrals that I can send you to that would probably be happy to meet with you at all hours of the day. That's just not how we do things here. And I hope you can respect that. And I've found that most great humans that also have families will 100% respect that. In fact, they'll encourage it and say, you know what, absolutely. That was growing up, family dinners where we protected that. And that's important. And so anyway, a little bit of framing is always helpful there. Okay. So let's get into, this has been a big buildup. Let's get into the actual model. And I have to give a shout out to Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach. I know many of you in finance are huge fans of Dan. Many of my former clients have been Strategic Coach clients. I feel like Dan has really gotten on the map as he started writing books, Who Not How, the 10X book more recently. And so part of this model is inspired by Dan Sullivan's calendaring approach. And I believe he calls them free days, focus days, and buffer days. What's up, DBDL insiders? Brad here, and it is official. We have an apparel website, a swag website, whatever the kids call it these days. It's available and live now at dbdl.com. Go check it out. Also, we have a special discount code for you DBDL insiders. It is DBDL. If you're watching this on video, I'm actually rocking one of the hats. It's one of my favorites. They're super comfortable, waterproof, and we have shirts, we have hats, we have crossbodies, or as I like to refer to them as the old school fanny packs from back in the day that are back. Really cool lifestyle swag. I can tell you I have a number of our DBDL shirts. These things are top notch. Jason Khalipa himself told me it's one of his favorite shirts to work out in, former CrossFit Games champion. Henner Gracie rocks it as well. So go out to the website, dbdl.com, check it out. Send me some photos once you do. Tag us at DBDL Podcast on just about any social platform once you're rocking the DBDL gear out in the real world. So this is a first. I'm no Simon Bowen for those of you that enjoy his episode, but let's see if we can kind of sketch this out and get into it. Okay, so here is a replica calendar. And there's a few problems. Here's what I see oftentimes. So we're going to have green that is going to replicate money-making days, okay? And oftentimes, here's a problem I see happen, and I'm going to title this the Swiss cheese calendar. Okay, so we've got Monday through Friday for working days up here. We've got Saturday, Sunday as my weekend, and then we've got just rough timestamps, so 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. over here on the left. So think of these as time blocks for your week. And disclaimer, there is no such thing as a perfect week. You're in finance, fires are going to pop up. But if you start with this as kind of the ideal calendar, and this, we're really looking through the lens of a revenue producing financial advisor, which is oftentimes the founder. But as you start to scale and add multiple advisors to the firm, there's a few things you want to do, and that's really build a model that maximizes the value of everyone's time as an advisor. And typically the advisor, back to the McDonald's analogy, is the one driving revenue at the cash register across the conference room table from a prospective client. So the Swiss cheese calendar, the problem with this is random meetings sprinkled all over the place. And if you think about flow state, I know many of you over the years I've talked to, and you grew up, I was cold calling day 2 in the business, make 100 dials, convince a financial advisor it makes sense to fly into Kansas, pay $2,000 and go to a training. That was not an easy sell. But if you think about flow state, whether it's running appointments, cold calling, door knocking, the first one's always the hardest. And then once you get warmed up and in the flow, now you're hearing the same objections. You're kind of in the groove, as I like to joke. Throw on Eye of the Tiger for money-making days, whatever gets you amped up and ready to go. But green represents making money here. And if that's sprinkled randomly all throughout the week, now you're multitasking. Every study under the sun says this is not the most efficient way to optimize human productivity. And so now you're like, okay, let's make some money there. Oh, shoot, that one gave me, and I want to think about it. Okay, we've got an internal meeting here. Let's see here. We'll switch it to red so that we can represent non-revenue producing. So here's non-revenue producing activity here. Okay, I've got some internal meetings. Oh, here's some planning. Boom, I've got this whole day open. And then, oh, Wednesday. Okay, now I'm doing an end of the day. So Swiss cheese calendars, there's just a bunch of holes in your calendar. Very inefficient. Hard to get in the groove. And so what we start to look at is if we think about this as working in the business. So in the business is the green, making money, revenue producing days. On the business is typically, vision days. If you're a founder, what are some big initiatives we need to work on? Might be internal team meetings, leadership, training, all team, kind of the Monday morning sort of meetings, strategic partner meetings, working on the business. And then off the business, we'll make that red here. Most founders I've talked to prefer not to work weekends. So if you're taking Saturday and Sunday calls, that's the first opportunity. So Saturday and Sunday, I want to be completely unplugged. So off is no emails, no phone calls in an ideal world. This is recharge time to be with the family. And really the goal is to build a business that serves your life, that doesn't become your life. So if you're sitting listening into this and you're running a ton of Saturday appointments, taking phone calls, texts on the weekends, that's the first place to start. And one of the ways I like to look at this is putting the big rocks on the calendar and working backwards. And what you want to do is you want to make some non-negotiables. So if you start with, hey, I don't want to work weekends. Maybe you are. Maybe you have in the past. Maybe that's years past, but that's a good place to start. So that's the off time. I know as a lot of the firms that we've worked with scale, a lot of founders like to start to protect Friday afternoons too. So you can even, I've got some firms, the founder works 2-3 days a week. And so you can kind of retrofit this and you can expand it as you continue to scale and grow and specialize the members of your firm. But let's just start with, I'm going to go all the way back here and we'll reset this calendar. So we're going to now build this. This is a model. Once again, disclaimer, every firm's different. This needs to fit you, your personality, your goals, your season of business. If you're just starting a business, this might not be possible, but it's something to aspire. And so now if we say red represents off, so I'm just going to do that. This is off. Okay, now the next thing we want to think about is working on the business. And let's just go ahead. Let's make that a yellow right in between here. And here's where a lot of firms start out. So this is kind of an ideal to work towards. I'm going to give you the thinking behind this. So if we look at off and then this is on the business, the reason we put this on a Monday and a Friday, by the way, this is an aspiration. Most firms that I work with do not start here. But if I look at kind of putting buffers on the week, the ends of the week, the Monday and Friday, there's a few reasons behind this. First off, think of it as like powering up for the week and powering down for the week. So Mondays tend to be a great time to organize the team and all team divisional meetings, depending on the size of your firm. But now we're like kind of getting everybody going. Like part of a leader is vision and inspiration. So let's get the team fired up and ready to go and aligned for the week so we can go crush this week. Fridays, why that tends to be a good one. A lot of founders, as you start to build a business that serves your life, sometimes 3-day weekends are nice. Maybe it's a little 3-day getaway. Maybe it's some time at the lake. Maybe it's golfing on Fridays. And so if we now start to structure Mondays and Fridays as working on the business, let's say, hey, we're going to do a 3-day weekend. Friday is off. If there are a bunch of meetings on your calendar, number one, it's a huge pain in the butt for your team to move a bunch of preset appointments that are external facing versus internal. Hey, let's just bump that to next Friday. And it's every time you're moving revenue producing activities to kind of extend the weekend. And so that is a really cool way to kind of buffer your weekends and really, once again, build a business that serves you. So let's get here and we'll work into this. So green, these are working in the business. So these are revenue producing days, revenue producing activities. And if we look at it this way, a couple things that are helpful to think about. Mistakes I've seen made over the years is firms that think it's a good idea to just hire new advisors to create additional revenue. Well, one way to think about it is, number one, most humans don't work for free. So if you're a founder and you add a new advisor, basically you took a percentage of your profits and you handed that to the next advisor in line. And so a typical rule of thumb, let's just say this would be an insane calendar, but let's just say, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 appointment opportunities a day. If you only ran 1 hour appointments with no buffers, which I do not recommend, on this calendar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times 3, you would have 27 opportunities. So typically what I recommend before you add additional advisors to the team, you are booked out a couple weeks. Where this starts to be a pain point is people start falling off the calendar because it takes too long for you to get to them. So what we want to do is retrofit a founder's calendar to where they're busy enough where it is not operating at red line burnout, but busy enough like, hey, this is a great solid week where I'm excited to go in the office, serve some clients, make some revenue, win on all fronts. So let's go into what that looks like. I'm going to back out. So as we look at, for simplicity's sake for today, let's say we're just going to stick with 1 hour appointments. Here's another thing when it comes to systemization, back to McDonald's. I've seen another thing get in the way for advisors where your first appointment, your fact find is 90 minutes. Your second appointment is 3 hours. Your allocation appointment, your third appointment after assets have moved and you're basically distributing them, oh, that's 2 hours. So think about this like Lego blocks. It's a lot easier to build and structure a calendar if the pieces are the same. Now, that's not always perfect, but let's just say we go to, for today, a 1 hour appointment. What I found to be more standard is probably a 90-minute. But if we have a 60-minute time block, one thing you have to remember is meetings are kind of like gas. They expand to fill the space. So we have to be really tight and control this. Otherwise, if you're doing 3 hour appointments, what you're actually doing is you are massively hurting your own credibility. From my experience, high demand businesses, people whose time is very valuable, they don't just give it away freely. And if a client sits with you for 4 straight hours, they're starting to think in the back of their mind, wow, doesn't Brad have anybody else to see? Am I the only one on his calendar today? So this calendar, there's a whole nother concept we can get into another time. It's called the 15-minute warning knock. If you all want it, it's a great way to control your time, build credibility, authority, celebrity. But today's not the day for that. So maybe drop some notes in the opt-in or on YouTube if you're watching it there. If you want the 15-minute warning knock, I'll share that on a future episode. But back to this. So let's say you're at 1 hour. So now what we want to do is we want to put buffers, because if you are running appointment to appointment to appointment, basically what happens is you're like most doctors. You go to a doctor's office, typically that's a really bad experience. You show up, your appointment's at 9 or 10, and you don't get in till 15, 30 minutes later. So basically the whole day cascades and domino effects where they're constantly behind schedule all day long, and it's a horrible client experience. So if you don't want that for your clients, what you start to do is build in buffers. So let's just say we have a 50 minutes where there's 50 minutes here and a 10-minute buffer. 50 minutes here, 10-minute buffer. If you have 90-minute appointments, I've had a lot of firms where they'll actually schedule them for 75 and put a 15-minute buffer. Because if you think about this, and I learned this lesson from Michael Hyatt. It's if you run straight 60 minutes, 60 minutes, 60 minutes, there's almost no way by the end of the day you are not behind schedule down here or completely frazzled. And basically you haven't used the restroom all day, you haven't eaten. And so that's not a good way to build a business. So if we look at it there, we've got buffers, because now what you can start to do is you can do a recap. One of the ways a lot of our offices train service advisors, they'll have a second chair advisor riding shotgun. Now you do an after action review as soon as that meeting's over. Hey, what questions did I ask that you weren't sure what they meant? What acronyms did I say? Hey, were there certain things I said that you understood the why behind it? So we recommend, from training additional advisors, you're always having buffer, because now you have after action. Now you can dictate your notes. Now you can put them into Salesforce or whatever your CRM is. And now you're not losing all of this knowledge all day, every day, where you're running around like a wild person. So this is an interesting concept. And if you think about, once again, back to eliminating the problem of a Swiss cheese calendar, now what we're doing is we're batching appointments back to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. These are revenue producing days. And so now it's like, man, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I better have my A game on. I better be ready to roll. A lot of our firms also we'll do this. So back to specializing. If we have a pair planning team member or advisor, now maybe this time period right here, hey, here are the 10 appointments for the week. We're going to go ahead and review the plans. We use a framework called 10-80-10 for delegation. 10%, the first 10 is ideation, the middle 80 is the work, the last 10% is quality control. So think of this like a quality control meeting where your paraplanner is bringing into all the advisors that have appointments that week. You're reviewing those plans, making sure they're bulletproof. And now, just like a doctor running into an appointment, grabbing his clipboard as he walks in, now you are fully prepared, confident, know exactly what problems you're going to solve in each of these meetings. And now you have batched it where back to back to back to the cash register, the McDonald's analogy, your selling advisors, all they're doing are selling all day. They're maximizing revenue to the firm. And the interesting thing, this is very much a selling advisor appointment calendar that we're kind of overviewing today. A service advisors might look very different. Their green would be replaced, the green on this calendar would be replaced with service appointments or review meetings, depending on what your firm calls them. So now they're in another room doing reviews. And what happens when they uncover new assets? Hey, Aunt Betty passed away. I inherited $2 million. Well, sounds like we need to get you with Brad over here. He helped build the plan. He sounds like there's going to be some pretty substantial updates to that. Let's get you back on his calendar. So now it goes right back on the selling advisor's calendar, right? A couple other edits that I've seen over time, because a lot of offices, this seems like a pretty dramatic shift if you've just been taking appointments all hours of the day, Monday through Friday. So I have had some firms so this is primary. Let's just color in the green. These would be the primary revenue producing days. I've had other firms where they're like, hey, I want to do a working on the business on a Wednesday, middle of the week. For some reason, like, hey, team members are there that day versus Mondays or Fridays. So you can shift these days. I would say this is the most standard, because think about getting in flow state. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's 3 straight days, all stacked appointments, and it buffers your weekend. So a lot of advisors love to protect the weekends. But you can shift these days of the week if needed. But these Monday, Fridays that I'm highlighting green now, I've had a lot of firms where these are their backups. So this would be right here, primary. And these would be secondary time slots. So their appointment scheduler is going to say, hey, we've got a time slot open Tuesday at 11 or Wednesday at 2. And then I absolutely can't make it, I'm traveling. Well, we do occasionally take Friday mornings or Monday afternoons. Do either of those two work? Another one I've seen, if you're working with a lot of younger age, I don't recommend this, by the way, but if you're trying to work and kind of rein in, I'm doing a lot of after hours, you can do a couple days a week where you do an after hours appointment. Maybe you work with a lot of younger clientele that are still actively working. And so you could have like 1 or 2 late appointments a week too. Or maybe you've just got young, hungry advisors that don't have families yet and they're there to grind. Cool. Just know what brings them to you is what they expect from you. So you have to untrain those habits later if you want to change that. I can't stress that enough for you younger advisors listening in. The other thing, back to the Lego blocks, McDonald's and franchise. So if you think about not just a singular advisor, but if I'm air traffic control and I'm your appointment scheduler at the firm, it's much easier if all of these Lego blocks are the same size. I'm just going to circle here. This is getting a little messy. If I've got firsts that run 90 minutes, seconds that run 3 hours, and thirds that run 2 hours, now that's going to be a mishmash and a really hard Lego block tower. So if you look at, hey, we just do 1 hour time blocks. Now it's much easier to say, hey, a first is actually 2 1-hour time blocks. So maybe that's the 90 minutes with the 30 buffer. But the cool thing is have set appointment times. So say you have a 9, an 11, a 1, and a 3. I see that pretty standard. So now there's 4 opportunities. I'm just going to highlight this a little. Let's go backwards here. By the way, if any of you are wondering how I'm doing this, I'm on an iPad with an Apple Pencil, and GoodNotes is the app that has templates like what you're looking at. Our coaches use this religiously. Really cool app. A lot of advisors have started using this for virtual appointments too. So let's just go ahead and kind of sketch this out. Let's just say, see if this shows up. Okay, so we're going to make this a little thicker. And let's just say these are my kind of 2-hour time blocks. So we've got here. We've got here. I don't recommend this, by the way, because we're scheduling over lunch. So there's 4 appointments, 4 appointment opportunities for the week. So if you just even look at that, 4 times 3, that's 12 revenue producing opportunities for the week. Most offices I work with would be like, absolutely. Like if we're booked out 2 weeks there, we're looking good. And then you just add additional advisors, additional cash registers in the McDonald's analogy, right? So if you look at scheduling for multiple advisors, it's much easier to say we've got a 9 open, an 11 open, a 1 open, or a 3 open, and not constantly saying, oh, well, would you like 10:15? Would you like 2:45? And creating all these partial time slots where you've got wasted time. So if we do this throughout the week with buffers in between, much easier to scale. The other thing I've seen a lot of is you can have startup times, maybe 8 to 9 is startup time where there's nothing booked. Brooke on my team, for those of you that listened to her episode on maximizing using an executive assistant, she does this for me. We have a startup in the morning and we have a shutdown in the evening, catching up on phone calls, emails. So these are basically blocked off. And then these would be coaching appointments, team opportunities, all that. Let's see if there's anything I'm missing here. I think that is a good overview, high level, of what I've seen work when it comes to scaling a firm. And back to where this got on my calendar, the text string with the mastermind group, Michael Height's mastermind group that we run, there was a healthy debate. I think especially like people that are kind of what I'd say natural salespeople. It's like Sean on our team says, don't block your blessings. I completely agree with that. So just know this is never a hard and fast rule. If somebody with $10 million comes in and they say, hey, I can only meet Friday at 2, that just becomes a business decision. And so I think the big thing to think about is, as I've seen firms scale, I've got one firm, he said, hey, if Michael Jordan himself walked in, and he's a huge Michael Jordan fan, if Michael Jordan himself walked into my office, I don't take appointments anymore. So this is a firm that will also do probably 300 million organically this year. So he's kind of earned that right. So there's always a process, a roadmap, but start with the end in mind. Where do you want to go? How do you want to protect that time? And creating a structured framework that can be scaled across multiple advisors on the team is absolutely the way to go. And really dialing in that ideal week for revenue producing activities inside of the firm. So with that, this has gone on a little longer. I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to stop my share here. I'll make this offer. I don't do it often, but if this really hit home and any of you out there want to say, hey, Brad, would you like kind of spend some time? I'll commit to 30 minutes of backing into what this could look like in custom building one of these for your firm. I've got limited opportunity here. So depending on how many of you take us up on this, we probably will have something on the intro on how to do this, So just so you know, if we have a bunch of people ask for this, I will be limited on how much time I have, back to controlling your calendar. But if anyone listening into this says, hey, Brad, I could really use this. My calendar is kind of eating me alive. I'm redlining out. I don't have enough hours in the day. This is a problem I've helped fixed many, many times over for some of the fastest scaling firms in the country. And on that text string, there were at least 4 or 5 that we've helped implement this. Like, my production has skyrocketed since I really optimized our team's time and focused on the task at hand during those days. And it's really just batching and focus is all this is built around, and specialization of advisor roles, and making sure you have a calendar that matches it so you can optimize and scale. So with that, I hope this was helpful. Uh, this is definitely a model that I've seen work over and over in every market in the country. And so I hope it was helpful for you. And please, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, leave some comments. Let me know which of this was the most helpful or where the biggest ahas came from. That just helps us dial in our coaching at Triad and serve advisors on a higher level. So with that, thanks for listening in, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care. Thanks for checking out this week's episode. On to this week's featured review. It comes to us from iTunes user JMC058, 5 stars. They say, reflective and effective. Brad and his team do a wonderful job of bringing on guests who exemplify the do business, do life mantra, each with their unique take on what that means. Brad's questions help strike this balance, advice for financial advisors on running their practices, as well as finding meaning in their work and lives. Well, thank you so much, first off, for taking the time to leave the review. If you're out there, JMC058, and you happen to catch this, please post on one of our social accounts. It's at DBDL Podcast on just about every platform that was you, and we'll send you a little swag or some love out on the internet. Yeah, I think life's too short to not do it that way. I think oftentimes how I got here to kind of arrive at this personally in my life is I sacrificed a lot, growing a business, starting out cold calling 100 plus times a day, trying to convince independent financial advisors to fly into Kansas. And that was a uphill battle at best. Most people just fly over or drive through. And, as I, matured in life, you go through different seasons, became a dad, wanted to show up for the things that matter in life, the memories, the experiences, the times you can't buy back after they're gone. I just realized a lot of our industry just kind of had their priorities reversed and weren't building a business to bless their life, but was building a business that became their life. And really, like I heard it said once, entrepreneurs, when you go and you leave and you jump into this crazy world, it's to build this dream business, this vision that's in your head. And sometimes you look up a few years later and you realize you started constructing a prison around yourself. And I think we've all been there at times. If you're honest with yourself, and the truth is you're cutting yourself a really lousy deal if that's the case. And I've heard a lot of regrets years later from advisors that did that. And so at Triad, that's our selfish mission, is to build a business that blesses our life, do business, do life congruently. And we want that for our members too. And so I'm glad that's hitting on the show. You all are hearing that. Hopefully we're helping with tools and frameworks that can help you get there faster and accomplish that quicker, or oftentimes dig yourself out of the hole that you might have dug. And it is possible with the intention and the work ethics there. So with that, thanks for listening in again. Thanks for leaving the review, and we will catch you all on the next episode. Take care.